plate that gets passed around, a nice gold plate. How many people would feel comfortable eating out of this plate? Not many. Not 30, but that's all right. So we'll put this right up here for you to gaze upon, and we'll talk about the plate. So the idea that I got, in this story of what we call the widow's mite, which happens to take place during Holy Week, right? Jesus is on his way to death. This happens on Wednesday, the day before the night that Jesus is captured and put on trial. The story that he's outside the treasury and he sees a widow come and put in all that she had to live on. She gives to the treasury, which to Jesus means a lot more than all the large sums of money that the rich people put in. They give out of their abundance. She gives out of her poverty, and that is the difference, says Jesus. And I guess I want to just riff on this a little bit and talk about the ways in which we give now in the church using this. Because what we didn't read is the end of the story. The end of the story kind of goes like this. Jesus looked upon a millennial who passed the treasury on his smartphone and said, "Lo, look unto him who is giving to the treasury electronically." How wonderful that is. Because what happens is, if you're like me, you give through an automatic debit from your bank. So you don't even see it happen. And we give monthly. Allison and I give monthly. So every month, a total comes around the 20th of the month, goes out of our bank account, and I see it. It's gone. It goes to St. Margaret Church. And Charlie Lang, our treasurer, will tell you that he gets a check in the mail from the bank that says, "Peter and Allison Mayer have given this much." We don't get to put anything in here. Right? There used to be a little card that we had that said, "We give electronically," and that was so that if you gave in other ways, right? Maybe you give annually, and so there are 51 weeks of the year that you're not going to put anything in the plate. We had those little cards in the pew so that you could whip one out and put it in there so that you didn't look like a cheapskate. Right? Because how many of you feel that way? You feel like the plates are passed like, "Dude, I gave so much electronically, and I got nothing to show for it," and everyone's looking at me like, "Oh, you don't like the church." It's just funny the ideas that we get about the plate. It goes back to when I was in Washington, D.C., two funny stories. One time I went to a Capitals game, and they had a radio station that was auditioning for like a spot on a morning show. And I said, "Yeah, whatever, I'll try this." And so they interviewed me, and they thought it was fascinating that I was a priest. What's the first question they asked me about being a priest? The first question is about this. "Hey, so when it gets put up on the altar, do you ever take anything out of it?" The first question they ask. And this is what people think about the plate. It even extended to our president, right? President Bush attended St. John's Church a number of times, and at the early service that he attended, we had one of our sextons would come and pass the plate. She was a wiry 35-year-old black woman from Southeast Washington, and she passed the plate around, and when she got to President Bush's pew, he kind of looked at his wife, Laura, the First Lady, and then looked at Gigi and said, "Do you think I should put more than $5 in?" Gigi said, "Yeah, I do." Of course, the president doesn't carry cash, doesn't need you. He probably gives electronically, right? Saying, "What am I supposed to do?" In Puerto Rico 2 weeks ago where I was, the bishop and I talked a little bit, and I was able to celebrate the service on that Sunday. The bishop had already flown back, but he said to me, "Why is the offertory the most dour part of our service? I mean, it's worse than the confession, isn't it? It feels like such a burden on us sometimes." Maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just me, and it's not a reflection on the music at all. But it's the idea that giving should be a joyful thing. And yet oftentimes we feel like it's a tax. Do we ever feel that way? Oftentimes we feel like it can be a tax. I know a church in Rhode Island, that was my friend's church. It was a downtown church. It had a number of people that would fill out their pledge card. They would pledge $2 a week, which in 1940 was a large sum of money. But they had never changed it, right? They had never upped it. So they were doing this, and my friend would go to them and say, "Do you think you might reconsider a larger pledge?" And they said, "Well, really, we're just giving it so that we can get buried out of the church." We want to be able to have our funeral there, so we want to keep our pledge active. So it was in no way connected to doing God's work. It was in no way connected to giving out of what God has given us. It was essentially a dues payment that they were exercising. And that is not what giving to the church is about. And oftentimes I wonder if part of the lack of joy is on my own part. So I wrestle with this in my own life as a rector of a resource church like St. Margaret's. You all are so busy. You all have so much going on in your lives. You are so busy. And yet, when I get up here and I say, hey, there are some great opportunities to get involved. Won't you please consider connecting with this ministry? We need people on the altar guild. We need people at coffee hour. We need people to do formation. We need more singers in the choir. I say, I'm just burdening them. I'm just asking them for things that they can't do, and I'm asking too much of them. When I ask about a pledge, and I say, look, really consider prayerfully increasing your pledge because we want more church. I say they can't give any more. They're so generous already. They've given to the building fund. I say they've given enough. And I get conflicted in myself. I say I'm asking too much. But then I pray about it and I say, well, wait a minute. If I'm asking for more church, I'm not asking for anything that they haven't said that they want. Right? This is what I've heard you say. We want these programs. We want these programs to thrive. We want our music to be well funded. We want our formation to run as excellently as it does. We want to give to missions out of our operating funds. And for that, that's more church. So I've got to ask for that. And I wonder sometimes if I'm not asking enough. Because to some degree, being a part of a Christian community, just like following Jesus, takes a commitment. It takes a strong commitment. And that's what I have to ask for. That's what I have to ask for as a priest. I've got to ask you to be all in. Because otherwise, it doesn't do you any good. It doesn't do me any good. We're all just kind of dancing around. We're almost faking it. We've got to be all in. So I wrestle with the idea of, am I asking for too much or am I not asking for enough? A lot of people say that, non-denominational churches, more fundamentalist churches, have a higher rate of attendance. And I like to think, well, it's because their preaching is more simplistic, more emotional. I don't think that's it. I think it's because they take seriously the commitment that it takes to follow Christ. And they talk about it constantly. They say, you've got to live up to that commitment. They raise the bar high, and the people there reach it. I wonder sometimes if I don't raise the bar high enough. And the reason I bring this up is because Bishop Chilton Knudsen, who is our now assisting bishop in the Diocese of Maryland, told a great story a couple of weeks ago that I heard. She was a bishop of Maine for a long time. That's how my parents know her. And she would travel to Haiti for their companion relationship with Haiti. And so she'd get out of the car and she'd visit a church, and the people there would present her with a gift. Whether it was a priest in the church, whether it was somebody who was leading the women's guild, they would present her with a gift. Food, a piece of art, some clothing, some cloth, some coffee or something. And she would know how much it cost. She would say, I have 5 of these visits a day, which means that 5 people are essentially going to go through harder times than they already have been just to give me this gift. She felt so guilty. So finally she said to her handler, her Haitian driver, she said, look, would you do me a favor and would you tell the people that I visit, there's no need to give me anything. Please don't feel obliged. I really don't need these gifts. And the driver turned around and said to her, Bishop, you must not take away their dignity. You must give them the chance to give. And I've been reflecting on that in this season of stewardship and talking about giving, in that I cannot take away our church's dignity. by lowering that bar and saying that giving isn't really important, because it is. And it's not just this card, it's not just a pledge card. It's the hours that you give. It's the hours you give on a vestry. It's the hours that Charlie gives as the treasurer. I mean, he's like a part-time employee that we don't pay. It's the hours that Robin Bosworth gives, not only as clerk of the works for our new building, but now as kind of a maintenance person around the campus. It's the hours that Dalen Huntley and Gwen Davis and all of our formation volunteers give, on the order of 3 or 4 hours a week. And that is shaded sometimes by hours that our choir members give. Not only singing at 2 services on a Sunday, but also rehearsing for 2 hours during the week. 4 hours a week, 52 weeks a year. That adds up to over 200 hours a year that people give. And I met with somebody a few weeks ago. They said, you know, we can write checks. We really want to commit to the church. We really want to do something. They are looking to give out of their time. And for those of us who are so busy, those of us who thought that life would slow down in retirement, and have found that to be a big fat lie, those of us who are working 2 jobs with 2 kids at home, you realize how precious time is. Time can be just as important and just as big as money. When you give your time, that is huge. That is a sacrificial gift. And we can't do church without it. We can't do church without the funds and the pledges that we receive from you. Similarly, we cannot do church when you don't give your time. So thank you. Thank you for giving. You know, I'll close with this idea that the offertory should be the most joyful time of the service, because it's a chance for us to give. When I was in Puerto Rico, it was. You know, we broke for announcements, and the offertory sentence was pronounced, and you know, all of a sudden you're caught up in this party. And there were only 50 people there in this church that was probably half the size of this, but the choir was 4 women who were kind of dancing a merengue over here and all singing into the microphone. And then there was a band over here. There was a 94-year-old guitar player. Can you imagine Emil Sirach jamming out the guitar over there? That's what it was. And then over here you had a drummer, you had a bongo player, and who was playing, you know, the stick against the banana thing? It was the treasurer. And the treasurer is dancing around as the plate's being passed around. It was so joyful. I want to see Charlie dance. I want to see our vestry dance. I want to see our staff. I want to see you dance. I want to see you understand the joys of having your dignity respected, of being given the responsibility to take part in God's world by giving. It's a wonderful thing. And thanks be to God for the good news of the gospel that we are given that responsibility. And our dignity is respected by saying, give. Give of yourself. Give out of your poverty. Give out of your abundance, because it is furthering the gospel. It is making God's kingdom alive here on earth. It is feeding the church, but it also makes you dance. Amen.